Well, you know all that optimism that I spoke about in my last video, the predictions for Tuchel's England 26-man squad? Well, that's all but evaporated with some of the players that Tuchel has decided to call up. Yes, today, at time of recording, is the team release day for Tuchel's first England squad for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. And it's not what I expected, and I don't think anyone actually expected what we got. So let's have a talk about it, shall we? Now, I know this is his first squad as England manager, and they're not for the actual tournament, and I would have expected to see at least a few changes from the Southgate era. But if anything, I'm just disappointed. So without further ado, let's look at those players. We're going to compare the squad that I predicted in my last video to the players that Tuchel has actually called up. So we'll start with the keepers. So Jordan Pickford, yes. Dean Henderson, yes. James Trafford, yes. Onto the defence now. Trent Alexander-Arnold, no, but he was injured in the Champions League tie that happened as I was editing the original video. Jed Spence, no. Tino Livramento, yes. Reece James, yes. Miles Lewis-Skelly, yes. Ben White, no. Mark Guehi, yes. Jared Branthwaite, no, but he's in the under-21s. Ezri Konsa, yes. And Levi Colwill, yes. Onto the midfield now, and Jude Bellingham, yes. Declan Rice, yes. Adam Wharton, no, but he's in the under-21s. Lewis Cook, no. Morgan Gibbs-White, no. Morgan Rogers, yes. Cole Palmer, yes. And finally the attackers, Harry Kane, yes. Ollie Watkins, no. Anthony Gordon, yes. Jared Bowen, yes. And Callum Hudson-Odoi, no. So I think we did pretty well. Most of the players that we have picked were chosen, so I think that goes to show that I got a little bit of ball knowledge up there, a little bit up here. But there are some players that I didn't pick, which Tuchel has picked, and they were Rashford, Burn, Quansah, Walker, Eze, Henderson, Foden, and Solanke. A couple of players in there that are quite rogue, I think. Not too sure what good old Tommy T was cooking, but it ain't good. I'll tell you that much. So yeah, I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this, but my word, some of those picks are just horrendous. The main talking point is the fact that Jordan Henderson has been recalled, whilst players like Wharton, Gallagher, and Morgan Gibbs-White miss out in the middle of the park. Now, in all fairness to Wharton, he did get called up to the under-21s, but the exclusion of Morgan Gibbs-White personally boggles the mind. If Tuchel wants to play an attacking brand of football, Gibbs-White would be perfect for that. Make it make sense. And we're not even going to talk about Hudson-Odoi either. My God. Calling up Eze is okay. I don't mind the shout, he's been solid this season. But in the same position, Morgan Gibbs-White just has better stats this season, and he's only played 13 more minutes than Eze. I don't mind Eze, as I've said. Good player, good pick, but personally, if Eze is in the squad, why has he overlooked Morgan Gibbs-White if they're going to play in the same position? I know Eze has a bit more flexibility in the roles he can play, and that may come into it. He can play on the wing a bit. But still, as a 10, which Thomas Tuchel recognises Gibbs-White as, he's phenomenal. He is one of the best in the league, and definitely one of the best we have in England. I really don't understand how you can look at a team that's flying high in third. I know we were fighting relegation the past 2 seasons, but Gibbs-White was a shining light then, and he is still a very bright shining light now. It just doesn't make sense. And we'll come on to Tuchel's reasoning as well, because he did say why he's not picked him. So we'll come on to that. But I want to go through all the other players that he's chosen first that I didn't pick. And of course, the next one we're going to look at is Ramsdale. Yes, Tuchel has picked 4 goalkeepers. Why? Ramsdale is 20th in the Premier League with the most goals conceded. So it's already off to a great start. I can't understand any reasoning behind taking 4 keepers for these 2 games. Pickford likely plays both, or at least one of the games at a stretch, with Henderson playing the other if he is the official backup, with Trafford there to learn from both of them. The inclusion of Ramsdale just seems pointless and takes a spot from an outfield player. Going on performances this season, Ramsdale just ain't it. If we're looking for world-class quality players, why on earth has Ramsdale been called up when he is neither of those? Let's be real, he's none of those type of players. We have 3 goalkeepers in the squad already who are better than him. I don't know. I really don't know. The only thing that I could think this is for is so that Tuchel can observe all of the keepers that he's considering before deciding which ones he wants to go forward with, test them with the ball at their feet, see what they're like in goal, see how they link up with the other players. That's the only thing I can think of, and then once he's decided on the keepers he wants to keep, he'll just pick 3 going forward. Fingers crossed at the very least, because 4 keepers is excessive, and it's really not needed at this point. But if he wants to see what keepers he's working with, then I could maybe understand it in that regard. Now, Reece James I did pick originally, but he's missed a lot of games this year through injury, and despite including him in my own list, I am very surprised to see that I got called up. He is fit though, and Tuchel did check many a times with the player and with Chelsea that he was fit enough to play for England, and he seems to think so. He has been playing regularly for the past few weeks at the very least, so that is something as well. And he's been playing well, so I can understand Reece James getting called up. That's not a bad pick in my opinion. Kyle Walker though, boy, I don't think it's harsh to say that he's past it. His drop-off has been plain to see, and that was typified by Man City letting him leave to join AC Milan on loan. I understand that he has extensive England experience, but I just don't think he's good enough anymore. We've seen it in his last games at Man City. The blistering pace that he was known for has severely diminished in his older years, which was to be expected. He did keep going for quite a while, to be fair to him, but I just don't think he should be near this England squad. I don't think he'll start. We have a lot better options, a lot younger options in his position now that could easily fill in for him and probably even do a better job. I think it's time to leave the football before the football leaves you, Kyle Walker. I know you're an experienced player. You've been a great servant for the country, but your time is up, bro. Your time is up. We've got a nightmare blunt rotation up next as we move on to Jordan Henderson, another past it player. He couldn't do it in Saudi Arabia and has also struggled in the Eredivisie too. He wasn't picked for Euro 24 for a reason, but for some reason has been welcomed back by Tuchel. He's not been great for Ajax this season either, only starting 14 league games and rarely managing a full 90 minutes. I think in the past 9 games or something, he started 2. It's not looking good. The only reason that I can think of for Tuchel calling up Jordan Henderson is the experience that he has. But there are so many more players in the England setup that not only have experience, but are actually good and useful. Henderson will always have those leader characteristics. He was always the vice captain after Harry Kane, and I can see why that would be useful. But in the current state of things, you want to be picking players that are good, and he simply isn't. It's all well and good him having, influence in the dressing room, but you're taking a player spot that could have been utilised by someone who's just a lot better and could be more valuable to the team. Southgate dropped him for a reason, and without sounding too mean, he should have stayed dropped. I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I've listened to Tuchel's reasons for including him. None of it is footballing related. It's literally just vibes. I hope, now this might sound mean, great servant for England, but I don't want to see him in the World Cup. He's going to be like 36 at that point. He's also included Rashford, which is another interesting choice. And questions have been raised about his attitude, but he looks to have regained some of that form, some of his love for football at Villa. It seems that Man United is really a poisoned chalice at the moment, and that anyone who leaves the club to play football elsewhere immediately does a lot better. I mean, look at Anthony cooking in La Liga, and now Rashford looks a lot better while he's at Villa as well. But even with this slight resurgence, he's not been a brilliant player, and he was also excluded from the Euro 24 squad and hasn't really shown why he deserved to be recalled. I know Tuchel talks about, putting his faith in him, making sure he stays at that level that he's reached now he's at Villa, but I don't understand it, because if he's not performing at club level, or he's not performing at a better level than some of the players that have missed out, then why have you called him up? Yes, he has the England experience, but he's not been in the last major tournament, and he's just not been good at football recently. So it's another interesting one. I can't understand it personally. And then finally, Philip Walter Foden. Now this man is in the worst form of his career and hasn't scored a goal for England since the 150th anniversary game against Scotland back in September 2023. And although he has scored 7 goals for Man City this season, he has shown no reason to get called up again. He's currently in the worst form of his career, as I mentioned. From my own perspective, right, Phil Foden has done nothing for England for the past 2 years, past 2 major tournaments. He's ghosted, quite frankly. Why does he get called up? Why does he keep getting called up? I know there was a good player in there once upon a time. I can accept that. He played well for England. But he's just not that same player anymore. He's not doing well. From this same logic, we could have called up Grealish, who's also not doing well at Man City. But no, we've given Phil Foden a pick because why? Does Tuchel think his mum might batter him? What is going on? There were so many better options that could have been chosen, but instead Foden gets the nod. And we're going to have 2 games with him not doing anything once again. I can't wait. And finally, Solanke. What more is there to say, man? He's been out of form for a while now. He was nowhere near the player that was on fire at Bournemouth, but part of that has been down to injury, to be fair. I don't think his current form really warrants a call-up either, and I can't see any particular reason why he has been called up, as there are more in-form strikers available that should have been taken over Solanke. I mean, Ollie Watkins springs to mind immediately. I don't get it, man. Some of these choices I just don't understand. Some of them I can, and some of the new players that have been called up, like Miles Lewis-Skelly, I do understand it. But picking Foden, picking Henderson, picking Walker, Solanke to an extent just doesn't make any sense. I can listen to why Tuchel gives his reasons for picking those players. You know, as a football fan, I'm not a manager, I don't claim to be the manager. It just makes sense to me. Surely, if you're picking for an international squad, you want the best, most informed players available. You're saying players don't have international experience, but Gibbs-White won the Under-17 World Cup and the Under-21 Euros. He has done it. He has been in the squad with Carsley. He knows international football. He is a quality footballer who will be playing in Europe next season. I don't understand it. Ugh. Yes, as a Forest fan, my main focus is naturally on our players, and Morgan Gibbs-White in particular is the one that I want to focus on because he was the one that had the greatest claim to being called up for England. You know, there's Hudson-Odoi, there was Elliot Anderson, and at a squeeze Ryan Yates as well, who I would have taken over Henderson in a heartbeat. Now, I didn't think Anderson would get called up originally, and he didn't, but was called up by the under-21s, which is fair enough. I think that suits him perfectly. Whereas Hudson-Odoi and Gibbs-White have been overlooked for no apparent reason. Tuchel was questioned about why these players hadn't been called up, and this is what he had to say.
Morgan, Elliot and Callum play on such a high level every week, and they're the high flyers of the league. Still, Elliot, for example, can still play for the under-21s, so he will be close by in St. George's Park. I see Elliot Anderson as a number 8, Morgan as a number 10, Callum as a winger. If you look at our squad, you can also see that they have huge concurrence on their position, world-class players who prove themselves on the same level than Nottingham Forest, who prove themselves in international football and even Champions League. So they know it, they accept it.
World-class players in their positions. What? The only world-class players that England have are Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham. No other England player comes close to being world-class. As much as I'd like to big up our own players, we've got a lot of excellent players. Don't get me wrong, Rice, Eze, Bowen, Gordon, they're all good players. They're not world-class. Neither is Morgan Gibbs-White, neither is Hudson-Odoi. But they're getting kept out of their positions because of world-class players is just absurd. And quite frankly, I don't see it. It's essentially saying that they've not been picked because they haven't done it in Europe, mostly the Champions League. Which is funny because Henderson hasn't for a number of years. Neither has Rashford. Eze just hasn't. Bowen hasn't. And Foden only scored 3 Champions League goals in 2024 against some quite lowly ranked opponents. These players aren't lighting Europe alight, and some of them aren't even in Europe. So I don't understand this world-class argument, because surely if you're a world-class player, you would be playing in Europe every season. Players that are keeping Gibbs-White and Hudson-Odoi out of the England squad aren't performing in Europe. They're not world class. And yes, both of them are not playing in Europe, but probably will be next season. So will that affect their chance of getting called up? I mean, it should do. They should have been called up initially, in my opinion. And as a Forest fan, I will always back that. But it's not just Forest fans that are saying this. It is football fans all over the internet who don't support Forest are saying that Gibbs-White should have been called up. It's a bit strange when a lot of people can see it, but people in charge of putting this team together don't. Like, we're both watching the same games here. You were at the Man City game, so was I. I saw Morgan Gibbs-White playing like a man possessed. What did you see? Philip Walter Foden do nothing? Honestly, man, I don't understand it. It's just strange the criteria that some of these players were picked on, in my opinion. And like I said, it's not just Forest players. You've got the likes of Spence, been one of the best defenders, in very good form at the moment, playing well for Spurs. Wharton, who admittedly is in the 21s. Gallagher, been doing well for Atletico Madrid. Much better player than Henderson, and younger as well. Also played under Tuchel before. Ollie Watkins would personally be my backup to Kane, doing much better than Solanke this season and has been consistently doing better than Solanke. You've got Gittins, who is in the under 21s, and Liam Delap, who's also in the under 21s. Delap and Gittins are kind of road shouts. Delap does play for Ipswich, which isn't great, but he's still a very promising striker, still quite young, and they're both in the under 21s, so they'll be playing there. That's fine, I can understand that. But this whole selection process is so bizarre that even Joey Barton has made a good point. Fucking Joey Barton. You know how crazy it has to be to agree with a Joey Barton tweet? It's absolutely mental. It basically goes through how Spain picked Lamine Yamal when he was 16 years old and have been flying, whilst we're still picking aging players. Yes, they've been servants to England, but why leave out these young attacking players that have, not even attacking, just these young players that are really good? And we have this talent at our disposal, we're just not using them. And it's so sad to see many of these players get overlooked. When you can see countries like Spain picking this young, exciting talent. France have done it as well with this 17-year-old. Like, what are we doing? I know Tuchel doesn't always go for young players. He was like that at Chelsea and at Bayern Munich. But he's picked some young players here. He's picked some clearly talented players. Miles Lewis-Skelly, for example, 18 years of age, I think. Tuchel's picked him, put some trust in him. But why not these other youngsters? What's going on? That's what I really want to know. In all fairness, it is Tuchel's first squad, and I do still think that he's the man to take us forward and to ultimately win the World Cup. But there were so many bizarre choices made here that my confidence is waning. I do think and hope mostly that this squad will change as the World Cup gets closer. There are some players that I believe deserve to call up and were overlooked, and I do hope to see that they get more consideration in the future. It's a very odd squad, but I do think it's a transitional one. Tuchel has been brought in to win the World Cup. That is it. So he needs to implement his style of play quickly and find out what players work for that style and what players don't. Which is why, again, I think we've got 4 keepers and some very interesting choices in personnel. And to get it all sorted out before the tournament proper next year. And hopefully, some of the players that have missed out will get the opportunity to shine and to show that they can do it in the Tuchel style of play, and he was silly for overlooking them. But on the bright side though, our under 21 squad looks absolutely stacked, and honestly, I'd give the first team more for their money at this point. Because just look at this under 21s team, man. It is phenomenal. Some brilliant stuff in there. I think some of them could have made the step up, but unfortunately weren't given the opportunity this time around. But we've got many games to go before the World Cup, so, you know, that could all change very quickly. Anyways, I've been O2GT, and that was my reaction to the first Thomas Tuchel England squad. What do you think of the side? Personally, I will keep the faith for now, but I just know that watching 0 minutes of Henderson ball is not going to be fun. But do you agree with our picks, or are you like me and think that it's quite strange? Please let me know down below in the comments. Maybe give me a player that you think should have been called up that just hasn't been given the chance yet. Also, cooked up a new outro screen, so I'll see you later. Peace.